early on, they wanted to make sure that people who wanted to try things out had a low barrier of entry, so relatively cheap rank 1 base items. It's really interesting because that's how they're talking about this as designers.
Yeah.
That's not how this game is played.
Not
How
at
this
all.
game is played is you work out what the one is for your spec in the circuit. It's weird. It feels like different bits of Blizzard are designing different games.
Yeah.
Because like what he said, what Morgan says here to me is like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yeah, that is in the reality in Morgan Day's head. Yeah, that's right.
And in a game that is not WoW, not played by like the way that WoW is, or even indeed a game that is WoW for people who are not caring about the end game progression, then that's totally awesome and right. But I also think this game that's being talked about needs a hell of a lot more not gear treadmill content to do. And that's maybe the weird thing, because this is like totally fine in principle, but the vast majority of players, and I think you even see this in the Covenant data, because, you know, you could have said, oh, Covenant's going with the right Covenant for your spec. Bro, that's only going to be done by fucking nerds. And then you look at the actual statistics that came out of stuff, and it's like, nope. No, people largely just did the optimal thing.
Yeah, because that's literally the player base you've cultivated over years of you deciding your game will be that way.
And making that
content.
content.
That's what happens when you know, Legion introduces M+. How did you not think that would tilt the needle of BFA players to gameplay-oriented, performance-oriented players? It's like the audience changes with every expansion. They kind of pretend it doesn't, I think.
Yeah, I think that they have inadvertently designed themselves into an audience that they don't want.
Yeah.
In some ways. And that's a really interesting and fucking hard problem.
Yeah, but that's
I'm not saying that's the truth, but it's like, this isn't really I don't think this is really how most people that you actually hear talk about in the end game. I don't think that's really how they played it.
Yeah.
But it's a good goal and a noble goal.
Yeah, of course.
Yes. But then saying, through this expansion, they have missed the mark in raising that floor.
Then what? That's the thing where, like, I don't want to just turn around and go, every single time that they come out to interview after an expansion, they go, oh yeah, we missed this mark. Oh yeah, we didn't do this right. Yeah, we weren't completely right on that. Because I don't just want to say, why do you do everything fucking wrong? Like, how do you do everything wrong repeatedly and all still have a job? Holy shit.
Slash slow.
Yeah, it's a case of like,
it's weird.
Just, well, I mean, this is what I think's going on. It's just like, actually get what you can do in your heads and do it. Don't try to pretend you're what you're not. I think that's what's ultimately happening a lot. It's like I don't know what it is. Just, yeah, we can do this. We're the best. We're the best. We're the World of Warcraft developers. There's no fucking game that goddamn shitty weeb game's got nothing on us. We're the greatest. No one can ever touch us. We built this game to 13 million subs. Like, yeah, some of you were on that team, but it wasn't you. That wasn't your work. You're now trying to keep this alive and failing every fucking expansion. So get your heads out of your asses and decide what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm tired of all this retrospective shit.
Yeah,
it's like, it's good and he's right and that's good, but I'm tired of having to wheel out same discussion again and again and again. We're like, because here's the problem, and this is not how he wants to come off. This is not what it means, but it totally comes off as, we're sorry.
Yeah.
We're sorry. I'm sorry. It's not what I think they think. I don't think they're being like BP Man in South Park. But it's just like, man, you really could have done that sooner.
Yeah.
Why did it take so long? And I really do, that this new patch has done a few things in terms of increasing the resources coming out, letting us use our Cosmic Flux to buy the bags that are basically just enough for a rank 7 Lego.
Yeah.
Like, it's fucking great. But why was this not done in 6.1? That would be confusing. Why was this not done
until next week?
Why was this not done in 9.1? Why was it not done in 9.0? Why was Stygia the fallback reward for the Great Vault for ages?
Yeah, like literally.
Why was all of this stuff so late?
Yeah, the Great Vault fix that's come in is now, what, like 17 months late? 16, 17 months late? Like, what is going on? This is, I don't even have words to explain how frustrating it is. Because I mean, I think I saw someone say, "Yeah, we're sorry, we'll do better next time" in the Hassel Costa cycle, which is unfair to call it the Hassel Costa cycle, but that's what people are calling it. So you have to kind of engage with reality, unfortunately, like you should be doing, Wizard.
I mean,
yeah,
you know, it's like you look at Dune and you're like, Dune director Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah.
Or big Dennis Volivant.
Dennis Volivant, yep.
But like that's what you see. You're like, oh,
yeah.
And okay, game dev pretty different to making a movie.
Exceedingly.
But, you know, it's like I'm not going to begrudge people calling it Hassel Costa cycle.
Yeah.
You know, if some dumb shit happens to something I'm involved with and people call it, it's the fucking Michael cycle. I'm not going to get salty about that because it's like, well, that's what I get for having my name in the door. It's weird. I think was it Skarsgård that had a few tweets just about like, you know, hey, we kind of know this shit too. It's just we can't make stuff as fast as you think we can or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's the bit that just gets confusing to me because it's like, well, okay, if you can't, then that really seems like a problem that should be solved because all of these problems, they linger for so long. And I think about the recent changes to legendaries and it sort of seemed like they just hotfixed in more resource drops and then they hotfixed in a new item. It's like, how long did that take? Really? That couldn't have been done earlier? You know, like
exactly.
If you can you hotfix drop rates? Why didn't you hotfix the drop rates to Shards of Domination by just make them 100% drops? Why didn't you do that? Because then it just would have meant that as somebody progresses through the raid, you know, in 1 or 2 weeks, they fill up their set and then they get their stuff. And I guess you're then going to say something about like tuning goals. So maybe don't do it that way, but maybe actually still do it that way because fuck it. Let's remove pain points first. And if we can remove a pain point basically for free, I mean, it's like they could have even done that. And then with the, the tuning tools they talked about? Raid-wide tuning tools.
Oh, yeah.
They talked about having, like the auto-tune. I mean, why don't you just give everyone a way to get their domination sockets, like fucking in 2 weeks?
Yeah, just turn it up, yep.
And let's just say that is an 8% DPS, or, you know, throughput increase.
Probably closer to 40, but sure.
Okay, buff the bosses by 5%. So, you know, make the bosses a little bit harder to compensate, but make it a net win for the players, whatever. Remove the fucking pain point and away we go. It's like, I don't know. I feel like I just want the more ballsy thing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just the case that they are paralyzed in fear of, you know, oh, what happens, you know, we do this and then the people who earn them feel bad. Or we do this and then we've changed the market and now nobody wants to do goal making anymore because they don't feel like they're operating within a stable economy that the government's not fucking with. So, like, I get those concerns, but I kind of feel like the average player's experience really needs to come first these days.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You mentioned Skarsgård earlier and his tweets. I brought them up because I thought they were very important, and they actually did have me rethink about a lot of how I speak on this, like, fucking Friday, because it's like I definitely come across like
all 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. I always come across as if I'm like, you know, I know more than they do, which I'm never stating is the case. I do not work in game design. I just think about it a fucking lot, and I played games for 20 years, so I guess I'm basically like an associate by their ranks or something like that. But it's that idea of, you know, he says he wants to hear about emotional responses, so that's what I've been trying to stick to. It's the idea of like the emotional response is this fucking sucks so much of the time. Everything sucks so much.
Yeah, the emotional response may not have as kind, you know, vernacular.
Yeah, it's a case where like there are so many points in this game where I feel bad because of how they've handled how rewards feel to me versus what I expect. Obviously, some of it's my expectation could be completely wrong. That's completely a valid like possibility. But there's so much of it's just like I put in a bunch of work and didn't get this. I put in a bunch of work and did get it. Okay, sweet. It's that thing where I actually have a pretty good example of this, where the Vespoid Flutter amount needs the Wind of Turbulence from killing enhanced avians in Zereth Mortis. I had all the other parts and I thought, fuck it, I want to make a cool bee. And I could make Buzz, but I'd rather have the color scheme of the Vespoid Flutter. So I was like, okay, I'll go kill a bunch of enhanced avians. It took me 20 minutes of flying around circles, killing these things, and I got one at the end. And I was like, oh, thank fuck. I was about to give up, but I finally got it. And that felt good. But then I thought about, it would have felt great if I had got it, you know, straight up off the first kill. I'd be like, yeah, how lucky, great. But if I had spent 40 minutes there killing and not got it because it was completely random, I'd rage myself into oblivion. And that's the kind of thing where those are like the possible emotional responses to that farming experience. As like, is that actually a good form of design? In some MMO circles, it's like, yeah, I just farm that shit for days. That's fine. And I think there's room for that in some cases. Like that might be okay because it's just amount. But it's that thing of like, that's my emotional response. But the other thing he said was, when you can't think of a reason why something's made a certain way or why someone made a choice, the answers are almost always either to realize your goals and belief are different and it's worth it to ask why, or to think harder. And I think in a lot of cases, I definitely try to think hard enough. Sometimes I miss that mark when I'm trying to talk about stuff like this. I think everyone's the same, where sometimes you just don't have the right like access to information, so you can't come to the same conclusion they do. But a lot of it is goals and beliefs are different, and that's what I like. That's why I always want to say, just fucking tell us what your like goals are. Whenever you post something, hey, here's what we're doing to the Great Vault, just be like, yeah, that's fine. Okay, here's why we're doing this. Here's what we think about it all. Basically, we need a very, very big design perspective on basically everything that happens, and then we can have a conversation that's like actually cool and interesting. And I think it would be perfectly fine to have that like under wraps instead of, you know, revealing everything you think about. But that's the kind of thing that I think needs to happen, because the amount of times, you know, it's about giving feedback. We're spending hours giving shit feedback if they have different goals. If I'm like, I would,
we never know their goals. But there's could be times where, you know, they're like, we can't tell them their goals or our goals. They'll be angry.
Exactly.
They just want the stuff now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've heard one or two people say that, you know, then the next sentence in some cases would be because they're entitled crybaby gamers, capital GTM, which I don't know. A few people have told me that was a very common thought pattern to player feedback, you know, including that of, say, Preach. You know, I've been told that. And it's like, I really hope that's not the case. I hope I'm not being told things that are truthful there, because that would really, you know, suck if true. But it's that weird thing. It's like in the void of understanding, how are people going to rationalize what they see and experience? Yeah. And I think that's where the WoW dev team, because they don't actually have a format to discuss things with their players. Yeah. They've like lost that narrative completely, because, you know, like, okay, let's just say, you know, little birdie comes and tells me that. If they told me that about the FF team, and then I was like, yeah, it was weird, somebody said this to me about the FF team, everyone would be like, that's fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are boys, there are people, you know, we know them. Yeah. It's fine. But with the WoW team, it's like, because there's this complete void of understanding and void of relationship. Yeah. People are going to be like, well, yeah, of course. That totally fits with, like, how belligerent they've been in design. Remember the whole Azerite reforging debacle that they never fixed? Those guys, of course they hate us. Yeah. And that's how it's going to feel to people. And, yeah, I have no idea why they have not fixed that up more, because, I mean, like, I really do think that's something that Josh really would have wanted to have more of. You know, because the community people are like, they're the number one people who catch all the shit from this, because they shield the dev team from this stuff, unless they're developers on Twitter who, you know, catch shit. You know, often unwarranted. Sometimes, well, it's feedback to a design, and you've said that's the thing you did. You're online. That's how it is. But it's like there's that void of understanding. I don't know. They need something, and I really, we're starting to get there with the community council. I think it was actually Skarsgård as well who had the excellent posts on loot stuff. Yeah, it was it's like it's like exceptional. Free to agree or disagree, but we understand and we get it. Yep.
And you know, obviously, like, that's a thing where I've said this before. If they come out and just say, well, this is our intent, and I'm like, well, and the intent is bullshit, and I'm like, I completely don't agree with that intent. I think you'll drive all your players away. So, like, yeah, well, if that's your intent, yeah. It's your game. Work away. Do whatever you want with it. But I'm super invested, and I want to give feedback, and I will continue to do that, and I'll do my best at it. Sometimes I'll get a little bit angry for the purposes of entertainment, but yes.
Yeah, it's like they almost need a design communicator.
Yeah.
Someone on the design team who, like, you know the way in school, right? You know, you would have teachers who would take on extra things. Yeah. Like, you know, this is the teacher who deals with, like, you know, children's safety or bullying or something. At least, you know, it used to be like that in my school, and the teachers, you know, they would have like a bit of a pay bump or something to obviously reflect the extra responsibility they were taking. Like, you know, the teachers who are the ones who have got the role, you know, that they have a predefined role in the school's fire drill.
Yeah.
It's like they kind of need that in the WoW team. Is this doesn't
Also pay them more.
Yeah, exactly. Pay them more, especially even a little bit more to compensate for the fact that they are literally putting themselves out there.
Yeah, more responsibility, more money. That's how business works. Like,
yeah, exactly. And it just seems like that doesn't exist on the team as a role, because it would have to be coordination.
yeah,
I feel like what they basically need is this needs to be decentralized. It can't be something that has to go through PR and community.
yeah.
This just
that's
has
the
to
problem,
be, hey, here's the latest post from the WoW design team. No one outside of our department had to greenlight this.
Yeah.
If it needed to be greenlit, it was just by the team lead.
Yeah.
And I just feel like the problem is that's not in anyone's job description, because they're hired to be game designers. But part of what's really important for them is going to be communication. So it's been really good whenever evidently people in the team have had time to hop on. And I think, Skarsgård also in the tweets just talked about like, maybe I'll write some thoughts on this later if I can get the time.
Yep.
And it's, my sort of response to that, or my thought in my head was like, well, fuck, I wish they paid you to do that, because I really want to hear what you think.
Yeah, it's like, I wish they would hire another person in your role so you could share responsibilities so that you would have time to do this. Basically, is that
100%, yeah.
Or they put the money into improving tools so you can do your job in half the time and then spend the other half writing it up. It's like that's the stuff. It's like that stuff would be super super valuable, and I think some of it is also because Blizzard are in they have like an unprecedented level of success, but also an unprecedented level of player ownership over their game in that kind of way. Whereas like it's hard to be playing something for 17 years and not feel really deeply connected to it, and have like this community that's like if like imagine this, they release a load of developer tools and say, we're not making the game anymore, you guys make the game. How
God.
many versions of that how many people would be like, let's fucking do this?
Forests of dicks. That's all it would be.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's like you look at a couple of like the private server projects, you're like, holy shit, these people are obviously they're making money as well. And you're like, that is so much effort just because of the love for this game. I think they're like unprecedented waters, and they're also too corporate, which isn't any of the developers' fault. You're like, fuck. Well, I have to get around that somehow.
Yeah, totally. To finish it off then, Season 4 time frame and itemization. So Season 4 was announced recently. Of course, seems awesome, actually. Brings back 3 Shadowlands raids with some twists, increased item levels. Seasons generally land between a 6 and 8 month timeline, and that's a starting point for the conversation. But ultimately, Season 4, its release will depend on the timing of the next update. They're excited to experiment with some older content that still holds up and has just been graduated out of. Exact raid difficulties are being decided, but definitely more than one. They want tier sets to be a part of itemization, but a lot is still to be determined.
You know what that means? First of all, that means Q1 23 expansion at the earliest.
I think so.
But also it means there's a lot on the table. They're going for just full itemization. They're making decisions, which means in the time frame between them making the decision and them having made the decision, player feedback will be valuable very much to them, especially on all the stuff on PTR, which is looking very promising so far. Very promising.